Hi, I'm Tom Stephenson, and welcome to Tools, Techniques, and Mental Models for Success series. In this series, we look at a lot of different tools and techniques that you can use to improve yourself in the business world, improve your business life, improve your personal life, as you'll see even by today, with a series of tools and techniques. If you like this topic and you're interested in some of the other topics, click subscribe. You'll see that I have a very large YouTube channel, and there's a whole bunch of different playlists. A lot of them have to do with the construction industry because that's the sector that I'm in. I'm a professor of construction management, and I've been doing it for a long time and excited to bring to you a lot of the different ideas and tools and techniques, specifically how you can apply them in the real world. So today's number 13, lucky number 13, is ask better questions and ask questions better. And we're going to be looking at the 5 whys as a tool that you can use and implement. And we'll go through a little case study that you can see exactly how it works. And then you can start thinking about how you can apply it in the real world. So let's get started. So asking better questions and asking questions better. There was this article that was written in the Harvard Business Review, and I thought it was a very good article by Judith Ross. And she listed a bunch of empowering ways and effective ways that questions create value. And so when you think about these points that are on the screen here, they create clarity. Can you explain more about the situation, right? So if you ask questions, they help to clarify or get rid of some of the fog from what's going on. Sometimes people don't effectively take those opportunities. So when you see something going on and there's some issue and you want to resolve it, one of the best tools that you can pull out of the toolkit is to start asking questions. They also, if you ask them the right way, so asking questions better, see there's 2 points there, asking better questions. How do you phrase the questions? But also, how do you direct it at the individual? If it's kind of accusatory, people shut down. If it's more open, that you're trying to really resolve the issue, then people open up. Big difference, shutting down, opening up. So you want to consider the way that you're asking the question and who you're asking the question to and your best approach to it. So they basically are going to bring together better working relations, build better relationships, build collaborative relationships. And that's how we'll connect later on with lean and the 5 whys, because lean, whether we're talking about manufacturing, whether we're talking about construction, whether we're talking about healthcare, is all about building better relationships so that you can get better engagement, because all of us is smarter than one of us. That collaboration with expertise is important. They help people think analytically and critically, because it really gets your mind working on some of the responses that's going to really help you dive more deep into the issue. And that, again, we'll get into the 5 whys of getting to the root cause, not sort of going superficially on things. They inspire people to reflect and see things in fresh, unpredictable ways. Sometimes the question for you and for the person that you're asking the question to gets them to sort of stand back and think about things from a different perspective. I never thought about it that way. Now you've really got me thinking on this. They encourage breakthrough thinking. Well, if you're not asking questions and you're trying to create and innovate, you're missing a whole breadth of opportunities there. They challenge assumptions. Well, just because we've always done it that way, maybe this isn't the way we need to do it anymore. So we have to question our history and why we've done things and what the outcomes have been. I think a lot of people, there's an excellent book called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke, and she's a world class poker champion, but also a PhD. And so she knows analytics and knows research and probabilities, especially with poker. And just because you had a good outcome doesn't mean you had a good decision. So just because this project finished on time doesn't mean all the decisions you made were good throughout. Just because you went through a red light and you got through the red light to the other side, okay, doesn't mean that you should run red lights in the future. You got lucky. So asking a question about that, was it really a good decision? And looking at that can help you really sort of rephrase things and think differently, and most importantly, make better decisions in the future, because that's what it's all about, that continuous improvement aspect of getting better all the time. So definitely they challenge assumptions when they're asked the right way. So asking better questions, more in-depth questions, and asking them in a better way. They create ownership of solutions. Really, if you've got engagement and involvement, you've got buy-in. If you've challenged people, and I mean challenge them in a positive, proactive way, and they've helped contribute to the solution, you've gone a long way to buying into that commitment. We've talked about in previous of tools and techniques series the power of goal setting, and we've talked about SMART goals, and SMART standing for specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, time bound. But we also talked about the big C, which is commitment, and getting that engagement helps to get that commitment. So those are important factors that lead there. And good questions that you can think about to ask the team. This is just like a starting point for you. Might get the little gray cells working away up there, plugging away with your own questions. But if we're talking about working with a team, I think that should be a your. I can question the spelling on that. In your experience, what do you feel we do best as a team? So that's a different way of phrasing it, because you're already giving some credit to their experience, whoever you're asking that question to. And that's going to make them more likely to give you a well thought out response. What you want to be careful of is just getting superficial responses all the time. And that's okay. You can get superficial, as you'll see with the next tool on the 5 whys. Then you can start asking more deep questions. What do you think we were able to solve that complex stacking problem on site? So if we're talking about construction, why do you think we were able to solve that complex stacking problem on site? Stacking is where you have a lot of construction workers in a very small physical space, and that happens very often where you're on a short schedule or you've fallen behind and you're trying to catch up. Well, that takes a lot of coordination and effort. And so maybe it was fairly successful on the project, and you're a vice president and you're asking a project manager, why do you think we were able to solve that? Like how? How did that come to be? And that would be giving good feedback, and maybe that vice president would be looking at, well, how do I share this information to other project managers across the organization? What can we do now? And also, by the way, that's looking at something that was done fairly positively, proactively. So the project manager that's being asked the question is probably quite proud of themselves and their team, and is much more willing to really get into the weeds on that solution. What can we do now to avoid scope gaps in the future? So this would be really looking at things like the planning fallacy, where you're trying to look to the future, or you're doing a pre-mortem. What's in the future could go wrong? What could we do now to prevent that aspect from happening in the future? And a scope gap is essentially where we miss something. So is there some way that we can get better engagement? Is there some process or system that we should be looking at where we have multiple reviews and sets of eyes looking at that? Can we develop a checklist that will help us not miss things in specific areas? Very helpful on construction projects, healthcare projects, all of those kind of business-related items. How can we apply what we are learning in this phase to other parts of our work and other similar projects? There's no point in learning and then keeping it to yourself. In a business, you want to be able to share that information. You don't want every project manager to have to go through the same problems that you went through. And as a leader in an organization, you want to figure out, well, how do we gather that data and spread that information? So it's a good question to ask and to see what the responses are, and then to look into a process of making that happen. Don't ask the question, you don't get the answer. How are you going to make it happen? How can we build better relationships with our clients, subs, and suppliers? It gets people thinking on those terms, and it also helps to set up the culture of that particular business. If you're repeating yourself in these particular areas, like that kind of question, your team and the people involved in your business start to believe and understand that this is your culture. You put a lot of value on that. If you just give it a light lip service and don't really deal with it deeply and just superficially, then maybe they don't feel they're being evaluated or held accountable to those kind of relationships, or they don't see the value in it, more importantly, and that would definitely have a negative impact on the culture. So asking these types of questions can really be helpful. So the 5 whys tool. This is a widely known tool that is used not just in lean, but definitely all kinds of lean manufacturing, lean construction, lean healthcare, because it works. It's simple, it works. Generally asking why does not get you to the root of the problem. Most problems are more complex than just why did this happen on the surface and stopping there. You've got to really sort of source it out and dive more deeply. And this really came out of the Japanese automotive sector, the Toyota production system, where some machines were breaking down. The question kept getting asked, well, why is it breaking down? Oh, it's wearing out. Well, why is it wearing out? And you keep going deeper and deeper until you find out there's a specific issue with this particular machine that is at the root cause of the problem, and then you look at ways to fix it. So if you continually ask, and the only reason it's 5 levels, it doesn't have to be 5 levels. It could be 3 levels. If it's not a complex problem, maybe it's 2 levels. But maybe it's 8 levels. Maybe it forks out into multiple pathways because it's that level of complexity. So it could be, if you count the pathways, and that it could be 6, 7, 8, 10 different levels. But the point is, you have to keep working at it to get to the full depth, to get at the root cause. The root cause is what you want. You don't want to be treating the symptoms, you want to treat the disease. This is where we're at with the 5 whys. I guess that's why it works very well in healthcare, right? When you put it in that context. So it's really a methodology that we can use. And me being a construction professor, this is where I can see all of the opportunities, but I see it everywhere. I see it in my personal life. I see it if you're entering into a negotiation on something. Definitely it allows you to gather more information and more detailed information. I kind of did this little triangle up here, and so I kind of jumped ahead with the other one, but the level 5, seeking to get clarity on the problem. So at the first level, it's at the top of the problem, right? But you're going to keep digging down, and you're going to get more and more information as you dig down, right? It gets a little bit more understood at level 2, typically. Level 3, better understanding of the problem's complexity. We may even need to separate it into 2 paths because we can see that yes, there could be, this is a part of contributing to the problem, and so is this. And so then we have 2 streams that we have to deal with, or 3 streams, depending on the complexity. So that will give us a better understanding of those paths. And level 4, the problem gets much more granular. Now we're getting into details in each of those paths. If we've got multiple paths, or even if we've got one path, it's starting to get more better understood. And the root problem will reveal itself of what we need to do when we've gathered all that information. So looking at this, I was thinking, okay, well, at the top, the problem, it's high level. We don't really know what it is. And then as we get down to level 5, we get into the weeds. The other way that you could also look at it is you could look at it that you're starting out with this mammoth problem of all these things, and you're working your way down till you really get at the source of it. So you only have one item, or if you've got multiple paths, you're dealing with those separate paths in detail. So you could look at it from, we're starting at a very high point, singular problem, and fail, we don't finish our projects on time. Why don't we finish our project? And then you start working deeper and deeper into it. And of course, you're going to have much more items or breadth of items, but at the same time, you're going to be really honing in on, well, what is it that we need to do to fix this particular problem? Then you're at the root cause of the problem. So the red one really, I think, makes the most sense when we're trying to narrow it down to one particular item, or if it's 2 paths, 3 paths, those particular items. So how do we use that in an example? Well, I had this flooded basement that I dealt with a little while ago, and you can kind of see the water on the basement floor here. The water really entered below a window. The window had a window well. If you're not sure what a window well is, that's a window well. And so it's not the particular window well, this is more on a new house, but it was a window well. And what happened was the basement flooded and it's severely damaged. So first question, why did the basement flood? Water came in through the window from the window well. All right, that's fine. So that we know that it came in through there. Why did the water come in from the window well? The window well filled with water. Okay. Well, why did the window well fill with water? Well, there was a big storm. This is where it gets kind of interesting because most people would be stuck on this, probably at the ground level. It's seeping through. So it filled with water because there was a big storm. The eaves trough, which is up by the roof, carries the water away, overflowed above the window well. Also, the drainage pipe, there's a drainage pipe in the bottom of a window well that feeds excess water down to a weeping tile around the footings and takes it away. Well, it's old and it's all filled up and it's clogged up, so it's not draining effectively. So if you get a lot of water coming in, it's going to start to rise up in the window well. So we have two things that are going on. We have the eaves trough overflowed, and then we have this clogged issue. So the next question you want to know, well, why did the eaves trough overflow? It's okay, so it overflowed, but why is it overflowing? That doesn't really tell us. We know what's coming from there. During the winter, the snow and ice built up and loosened the connectors that hold the eaves trough and had the eaves trough sag down. So where the eaves trough was, it was kind of in the middle, and you have rainwater leaders at each end, but that's the low point. So when there's a massive storm, the eaves trough fills up, and then it comes over the edge of the eaves trough, and when you know, it's right over that window well. So it pours into the window well, and that causes a very quick rising and swimming pool basically in that window well. So it fills up with water. And so we see that that's caused it to drop down. So then the next question is, well, why did the connectors come loose that's holding the eaves trough? Well, they were not effectively fastened to the fascia board. So they were fastened through the fascia board, but then they didn't fasten into the rafters. And the fascia board was only 3/4 of an inch thick, not strong enough to hold the weight of the ice and snow in the winter. So of course it sagged down. So that's kind of going down that path, but we also have another path, which would be, why is the window well clogged? Years of sediment filling up. The house is older, not this particular picture, but the house is older. Over the years, it just clogged up. It wasn't well maintained. And so now, once we've done that, we've gone down those two paths, now we can look at the solution. We're at the root causes. We know the sediment built up in there, and we know the eaves trough's an issue. So that leaves us to fix the eaves trough to correct the low point and ensure it's cleaned regularly so that it doesn't clog up any of the downspouts. Dig and replace the clogged drain from the window well. Damp proof the wall in this section. Check for structural cracks. More expensive, but best solution in this particular example. Budgeted solution, if we can't afford to dig this out right at this particular point, we could fix the eaves trough and we could put a cover over this if in case in the future anything leaks from above, it doesn't fill this up, plexiglass cover so that it doesn't fill it up with water. That's the 5 whys. That's doing it in that fairly simple manner, applying it. Now, I think you can think right now of a dozen different ways that you could apply the 5 whys at your work and in your life, on projects, etc. So it is fundamentally a good tool and a good way of thinking about things. It helps you to solve problems at their root. I don't know any employer that wouldn't appreciate an employee that thinks that way. The other thing I just wanted to close off with is the aspect of Smarter, Faster, Better was a book that I read, and it had this great example too, because when we talk about lean construction, we'll save this for another tool talk, but incorrect or underutilized talent. So probably I'll focus in the underutilized talent area. if you're not asking people questions, you're not getting answers. And very often the extrovert, they're the first to jump in. You don't even have to ask a question. I'd do this if I were you, that sort of thing. But very often the smartest person in the room, in your meetings and all of those things, is the quiet one. And they're sitting there, and unless you ask them a question, you probably aren't getting that much input. So you want to start thinking about, how do I engage that person? Knowing their personality type, what is my best avenue to try to get them engaged? I like the example that Duhigg used. He wrote another book, an excellent book called The Power of Habit. It's kind of a renowned book in that way. But what I liked in this book was, he used an example from Saturday Night Live, and this is going way back to, Lorne Michaels has been producing Saturday Night Live since its inception, and this is going back to the early 1980s, late 1970s, and basically one of the comedians tend to very often be introverts. Comedians are very often introverts, and he used the example of John Belushi, was a very famous comedian at the time, and how he was kind of quiet. And to get him to come out, he made sure that when he ran a meeting, he had different techniques of bringing that out. And usually it started with a question. John, what do you think about this? And then all of a sudden, there would be this great idea that would be coming out. But if John never got asked, the idea never comes out. So ask better questions, right? And ask questions better. That's the second part. And the 5 whys. So we've really kind of got into 3 topical areas with regards to questions. Regardless of your approach, just remember, it's a great tool to use on projects, and it'll help you be more successful in the future. So if you enjoyed this video, please click subscribe. I'm generally putting new ones up every week. You can also click on the little bell. You'll be notified of when I post. I have an array of videos on my YouTube channel, and you can check the tools, techniques, and mental models playlist for ones that are a little bit shorter, like on this topic. But if you want to dive deep into some of the courses that I've been posting, feel free to go ahead. I'm Tom Stephenson, wishing you a wonderful day, and until next time, bye for now.